Hello and welcome to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. So happy to have you here today. I am speaking today with Michelle Hollinger. She is a sociologist, a spiritualist, and an author about worthiness and its significance to a thriving life. As a former newspaper editor, she is also the founder of the Sisterhood magazine, which is poised for a relaunch in 2025. Michelle is the creator of the Love Renaissance Project. It's an initiative devoted to helping lupus warriors rediscover aspects of themselves stolen by the disease and ultimately learn to release lupus from their bodies and lives. The project will offer a membership community, coaching, and a virtual summit to spotlight effective approaches to help lupus warriors thrive. This is such a powerful conversation to not just lupus warriors, but anyone that is struggling with any chronic illness or health experience. We dive deep in this conversation into the emotional and energetic roots of autoimmune conditions, of chronic conditions in your life. Okay. We are talking about the role of self-worth and what that has to do, what role that plays in your healing. We're talking about true spiritual laws and its effect on your health. We dive into self-compassion. We talk about the idea that I've spoken to before many times about a misalignment or a disconnection that is happening within you on a spiritual and physical level that has resulted in physical consequences of illness. Her knowledge and wisdom and her heartfelt place that she comes from in speaking this message to lupus warriors is so needed right now. So please listen in. Save this one because you're going to want to listen to it anytime you're struggling. Topics that we are talking about in this episode can be very triggering to those that are really in the throes of their lupus experience. But Michelle approaches these topics with such an authentic heart and with such care. And that is why I knew that she was the right person to have on to discuss this really delicate area of chronic health. So with that, I will zip it and let you enjoy this episode. Michelle Hollinger, I can't wait for our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Oh, you are so welcome. I am so looking forward to it as well.
We just connected within the last week, and I was so excited to see your take on lupus and your approach to helping women with lupus that I knew we had to connect. And on top of that, I am Holly Michelle and you are Michelle Hollinger. So it meant to be.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So your platform is called the Love Renaissance Project. Dive into that name for me.
So I totally believe that the presence of an autoimmune disease is really an invitation for the person carrying the disease to love deeply, profoundly, intentionally, and unapologetically. Because we all know that an autoimmune disease means that the body is essentially attacking itself. The immune system isn't doing what it's meant to do. And as a spiritualist, I understand the power of words, right? And so while this community of lupus warriors is my audience, because I absolutely positively love them, what I want to help them manifest is love. And so I need you to call the project something with love in the title. So the Love Renaissance, and I love just the word. Now, I'm a writer, so I love words anyway. So Renaissance, it always means an opportunity to cause for a resurgence of something good or something amazing. And so the Love Renaissance Project, I feel, is perfect for what I want to help awaken within love, and I was about to say love warriors. They are love warriors, lupus warriors.
Absolutely. Like you talk about the power of words. And I was even just having this discussion with another lupus coach a couple days ago. Do we or do we not identify with the term lupus warriors? Because if we're talking about the power of words, and I've struggled with this myself, I don't want to identify necessarily as a warrior because that implies that I'm always fighting,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
However, I do use that term because that is what many in this community identify as, and it's a way for them to find me.
Mhm.
But on the other side, warrior doesn't necessarily imply that you have to be fighting. It just has the implication as well that you have the tools
Mhm.
should you need to pull them out of your tool belt, right? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that phrase.
Very similar, very similar. I realize that it's a term that's used frequently in the community. And I wanted to, because I'm new to the community, I've never been diagnosed with lupus. My sister-in-law transitioned from it more than 25 years ago, and she was my best friend. And so I had an up close and personal experience with her about the disease. But as I started to connect with the community, I wanted to be respectful and to use terms that they use. And my philosophy about it is very similar to yours. I would really prefer that lupus warriors really not use the word lupus in anything to describe themselves. I would prefer they use what they would prefer to have instead of lupus, so that their subconscious mind is getting that message and manifesting that image and that reality for them instead of reinforcing that lupus is a part of their existence.
I agree with you so much. And yet at the same time, there is also this, at least I experienced this, and I think a lot do. There's a bit of a freedom in finally getting a diagnosis.
Oh,
There's a
yeah.
bit of a validation in getting a diagnosis when you may have been thinking that you were crazy because it can often take up to 7 years to get a lupus diagnosis.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
there's a lot of gaslighting that can go on within your friends and family, within the medical system, for people that are struggling with these really strange autoimmune type symptoms.
mhm,
And so, again, there's this like strange dichotomy of not wanting to identify because I don't want to ingrain myself with that energy of lupus and being run down with autoimmune disease, but at the same time acknowledging that this is an experience that you're having.
mhm.
How do you work with those dynamics?
I think that it's important for those of us who love people who are diagnosed with lupus to extend a tremendous amount of compassion, right? You mentioned that they're experiencing gaslighting from family and friends and from the medical community, which I think is absolutely atrocious. And so there has to be a great degree of compassion as we engage with people in this community. And so speaking to your point about the relief of finally having a diagnosis, that's real. My sister-in-law dealt with these symptoms for years before they came up with a diagnosis, right? And there was a sense of relief that she felt when they were able to give her a name for what was happening with her body, right? And so I think it's important to understand that, to appreciate it, to offer some degree of validation regarding it. But I also think that it's important for our beautiful lupus sisters to give themselves permission to move beyond that and to be open to some possibilities that they may not be aware of right now. And so to be willing to have the conversation around the power of words, to be willing to have the conversation beyond being gaslit by family and friends, and to be willing to realize that they're far more powerful than they realize, that they have qualities and gifts and skills inside of them that right now, because of their engagement with lupus, those qualities and skills and interests and whatnot are being put on the back burner. And I think that the conversation is just right for so many different avenues for them to recapture their true essence. And so I think that it's important for us to just broach those topics with a huge degree of compassion so that people don't feel like they're being gaslit once again by somebody who says that they care, that they understand that we're coming from a genuine place of love and sincere desire to see them excel in their rightful spaces. There's a lot there. There's a lot.
Going back to the power of words, how do I say this? We can identify or not identify deeply based on the words that we're choosing to speak about our experiences.
Mhm.
When I was starting on my spiritual journey, I honestly can't remember. I think this was actually a little bit before I had actually gotten diagnosed with lupus, but I had been dealing with autoimmune type symptoms and chronic fatigue for years. And when I finally started learning through a spiritual mentor the power of words
Mhm.
and how the words we use, the words we speak about ourselves, either internally and verbally, externally, make a huge difference in our experience of the world, our whatever it is that we're going through in our lives. And it gets rooted deep into our nervous system on top of that. So I started changing from saying, I have lupus or my lupus symptoms or my chronic fatigue to I'm experiencing lupus right now. I'm experiencing fatigue right now. That is a statement that I can not deny because it is something that's true. And yet I'm not owning it as if it's a part of who I am. It's just
Mhm.
something that I'm experiencing at the moment.
Right.
And so I think that's a really powerful place for people to start when they are on a health journey, be it lupus or anything else, of how are you speaking about your illness? How are you speaking about your symptoms?
Mhm.
Are you using that as a excuse? And I know that that word can trigger or letting it run your life, or are you making friends with it and saying, okay, I see you. I
Mhm.
see you. We're here together at the moment, but we don't have to stay together forever.
Powerful, powerful. I think what so many people don't realize is just how absolutely powerful our subconscious mind is, right? So we know that our subconscious mind, some people might not know that our subconscious mind runs the show. It's 95% of who we are. And it's built up of our memories, our belief systems, our values. It informs how we move through the world. It informs what we do consciously, right? And our subconscious mind takes what we give it literally. It assumes that if we're speaking about something, that we're showing interest in it, and if we're showing interest in it, we want it to be a part of our lives, right? And so, if I am identifying with a disease as though it is my own, my subconscious mind is very obedient. It wants to be my ally. It wants to make sure that what I'm speaking about is a reality for me. And so if I'm speaking about this disease as though it is mine, as though I've internalized it and it's a part of my existence, my subconscious mind is going to be there for me every time, making sure that it's conversely, if I want to change something in my reality, I can start to speak to my subconscious mind about those things that I would desire. From a spiritual perspective, everything that the way that I identify myself after the two words, I am, that's what I become. That's what I am. Those two words are so powerful, so powerful. And so understanding how powerful my subconscious mind is and that it takes what I give it literally and that it's going to go to work to making sure that I'm having experiences that match the words that I'm speaking, the thoughts that I'm thinking. I want to start to shift the dynamic of what I'm saying to your point. And instead of saying I have lupus, I'm experiencing lupus, right? Our subconscious mind is extremely powerful. And as it relates to health, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. I have 3 children. They're adults now, of course. But when they were little kids, if they started to get a little sniffle, the first thing they knew to start saying based on what I told them was, I am healthy and strong. I am healthy and strong. My kids are healthiest is, oh my God. They've rarely had, none of them have had, thank God, any kind of major illness, but also they rarely get sick. And to this day, if they do get a little sniffle, I hear them, oh, I am healthy and strong. It's been ingrained in them. And my granddaughter is the same way. So words are extremely powerful. And the words we speak to ourselves carry far more power than the words that we hear from other people. Those have power too, depending on how we allow them into our consciousness. Because if we're not standing guard at the gateway of our subconscious mind and people are giving us information like the medical community and all of this wisdom about lupus, then we're accepting that into our subconscious mind and allowing that to become a belief system. And then our subconscious mind is going to work to help confirm what the medical community has told us about this disease.
And to speak further on that, this is something that I'm really passionate about talking about is the hope for a cure, the push for a cure. We have to find the cure. I feel like there's a lot of danger in pushing towards a cure because that implies that it is only something that can happen outside of us, only experts can figure out. And until they do, we are helpless. I think that's the energy that drives into our subconscious. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 1000%. It's one of the reasons that I use the phrase, you can release lupus from your body, because that speaks to your power. That speaks to the power that you have within yourself, your consciousness, your mind, your body to release this thing from your body. And it's not incumbent upon the medical community finding a medication, because that's what their cure is going to be. It's going to be a medication, right? I felt as I started to engage with the lupus community that using that phrase, you can release lupus from your body, would be less triggering as well. Because I think that as soon as you say that you can cure lupus, or you can be cured from lupus, it automatically takes a person's mind to what the medical community has said, and that what the medical community has said for the last 191 years about lupus is that it's incurable. And I do not agree with that at all, because I believe that the mind-body connection is real. I believe strongly that our bodies have the capacity to heal itself. The body can heal itself. And I believe that certain diseases go beyond the body, right? I think that a disease like lupus is not a life sentence. I believe lupus is a wake-up call. I believe that a disease like lupus shows up in a person's existence to remind them that they have disconnected from themselves. And this is not blame or anything like that, because it's conditioning. It's conditioning. And little girls are conditioned to be people pleasers. They're conditioned to repress their emotions. They're conditioned to do what everybody else wants them to do and to put everybody else's needs first. It's conditioning, right? But lupus, I believe, is information. I believe lupus is information that is informing the person that somewhere along the way, there was a disconnect. And the manifestation of this disease is a reminder to you that, first of all, there's so much more that you're here to do with your life. So much more that you're here to do with your life. And there are some things that need to be undone. There's some belief systems that need to be unraveled. There's some self-perception that needs to be transformed in order for you to get back to yourself, and for you to connect with these qualities and these gifts and these talents inside of you that do not belong, that they are not meant to end up in the unfulfilled dreams cemetery. That's not where they belong. They are meant to be given birth to. They are meant to be expressed, right? And I think that lupus is a wake-up call. It is totally a wake-up call. There are millions of people who are living lives of quiet desperation, right? People who ignore their true selves, and again, from conditioning. But those people have normalized it, and that's just the existence that they're going to have. And they're okay with this complacent, mediocre life. I believe that when a person is diagnosed with a disease like lupus, it's because they have more to do with their lives, and their subconscious mind, that their consciousness, that their higher self is getting their attention and say, listen, the world needs what you have to offer. The world needs it. Okay. And so this path that you've been on that led to this diagnosis, because the diagnosis didn't just happen one day. There's some patterns and there's some belief systems that unfolded from childhood that were not resolved, and they became a part of their personality, became a part of the way they adapted to the world to maintain attachments to family members who feel a certain kind of way when they start to shine, right? So many different dynamics, but ultimately, the wake-up call that Lupus, I think, is here to deliver is that you, my sister, are filled to overflowing with things that you owe the world. And you, oh my God, the world needs what you have to share, and do the work to release lupus from your body, right? And the things that you discover about yourself in that process, the wonderful qualities that you engage with that are already inside of you, that they're not anything that you acquired on your journey to release lupus from your body. No, these things were uncovered as you started to reconnect with the truest part of yourself, right? And the skills and the characteristics and everything that you discover about yourself on that journey, they can be put to use to deliver that gift that you're here to deliver to the world.
Truly, we could just mic drop and stop right here. That was so beautifully said. I speak to this on a slightly different level. I think you started by saying I can't remember what you saw. There's like or what you said exactly, but there's like a disconnect between your higher self, right? And how you're living
Mhm.
in your subconsciously and or subconsciously. I speak to autoimmune disease as basically an incoherence has been created in the body. Like a miscommunication is going on. And just like you said, these are things that have built up from childhood on that create these patterns. And I believe the same. It could start from big T or little t traumas. Oftentimes they don't even register as a trauma because they are very subtle. But it's for whatever reason, your subconscious, your nervous system got triggered and it remembers that. And then it builds on that when something similar happens again and it ingrains it even more into the system, right? So we go through our lives. Our nervous system is doing everything it can to keep us safe, which means responding to everything that it recognizes as a trigger from childhood. And it creates these patterns. And slowly over time, we get disconnected from that higher self. We get disconnected from the way our physical bodies on a cellular level are supposed to be living and interacting with the environment. Like, I think this is not just an emotional or energetic conversation with higher self. It's also literally about how our physical bodies are interacting with our environment. Are we getting actual sunlight? Are we spending all of our time indoors under fluorescent light? Are we drinking clean water? Are we surrounded by toxins? It's really all of the above. And when I say that, I know it sounds complicated and overwhelming because I have to figure out how to start talking to myself differently. I have to not identify with lupus. I have to change everything I eat and get rid of my Wi-Fi. It sounds like a lot, but ultimately it's actually pretty simple. It's really just stepping down at each level and simplifying and simplifying and getting down to the essence of who you are on a higher soul level, remembering that, like you're speaking to, and then also remembering the divine intelligence that created your body and the way it's supposed to live within the environment. And we're just slowly getting back to the essence of things. And if we can do that just one step at a time, it can create huge shifts. Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference. And the reach of this podcast, it takes literally under 10 seconds. So go do that. right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Absolutely. I think it goes to willingness. When the desire to reconnect to your authentic self is a part of your desire, part of your intention, and you're willing to do that, your higher self is, yes, absolutely. Here she comes. She's coming back to me. Yes. And it creates ripple effects, right? And so having all of this information can be overwhelming, but when the core intention is to reconnect with your authentic self, your higher self will point you in the direction of things that speak to you, because that journey is different for each one of us, right? Some of us will be pulled toward a certain book. Some will be, pulled toward seminars. Some will be pulled in different and directed in different directions, right? But our higher being, its sole purpose in our existence is for us to have to express ourselves as fully and completely as possible, right? And the way that it does that, it knows us, right? It knows what turns us on. It knows what makes us click. It knows what's going to get a response from us. And so those ripple effects start to flow in what may seem like an overwhelming journey. Once you start and you start to incorporate these things that just feel good to your existence, after you've gotten used to it and you look back and you're like, okay, a few years ago, I started with this. And at the onset, it felt like I was not going to be able to, navigate all these different things. But now I see how everything is just so integrated and it's just a natural part of who I am. You know what I mean? And so the intention and the willingness to step into that space of authenticity is the starting point, because your higher self has so much wisdom, so much love, so much amazingness that it wants to express through you, and the willingness to allow it. Oh my God, it just opens you up to the fullness of the life that you're meant to live.
I think that we've been so conditioned, especially as women, but even more so in current times, I think with masculinity as well, we are really conditioned to suppress our innate power and that innate wisdom, that innate capability that we have within us. And I think it's intimidating and can be very scary to open that door to understanding the power that's really in us. This is something that I've been working on, and it's intimidating. And I know I haven't fully got that door open yet. I know I haven't. I know I have a long ways to go. And that's also part of life's journey, I think, too. But through this conversation, I want to invite women, lupus warriors, to just consider what we're saying and think that if you aren't completely fulfilled, maybe there's a little part of you that's saying, but what about this? Or, but what about that? And
Mhm.
just, I'm giving you that invitation to explore that a little bit more. What about that thing that used to bring you joy? Are you still doing that? Why
Mhm.
not? What can we start to connect to bring back some of that joy and some of that, oh, yeah, I forgot about that part of myself. I think that can be like a pathway towards like really understanding and getting to the roots of I am powerful.
Yes, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. The whole thing again goes back to the where we're conditioned, starting from the time that we're little girls. And we both have Gabor Mate in common. We love him. And one of the things he talks about, two of the things he talks about is the importance of authenticity and the importance of attachment. And that we give up authenticity for the sake of attachment because we're given a message when we're little that behaving in certain ways, expressing your anger, being quirky, having these unique, characteristics about yourself, that's just really not acceptable. And when you behave that way, when you show up as your authentic self and it rubs people the wrong way and they withdraw from you or they make you feel that there's something wrong with that, because the attachment innately is really important and it's essential to our survival. We gravitate towards maintaining the attachment and we drop the authenticity, right? But when we drop the authenticity and we're giving the message to our subconscious mind that being authentic is not cool, right? And so our subconscious mind gives us experiences where we can continue to be inauthentic for the rest of our lives, right? As we continue to suppress our emotions, continue to suppress the truest, most genuine parts of ourselves, our body is, hello, no, that's not the way it's supposed to go, right? And I really believe that there's a huge degree of self-hatred that comes along with an autoimmune disease. And I say that with so much love and understanding. But here's the thing. If you were taught from the time you were a little girl that being your authentic self was not okay, that it was not acceptable, that you might face some rejection or adverse consequence by being your authentic self, right? And so you learn that and you continue to behave that way throughout your life. The person that you are right now is not the real you. And so that's the person that you're hating. There's a part of you that knows, like that core of you, your higher self, it knows who you really are, right? And there's a part of you that hates that you've allowed this person who's essentially an imposter to take up residence in your life in such a huge way, right? So you're not hating the real, you're hating that you fell for the okie doke because we all do, because it's important for us to attach to our caretakers. As little kids, they have to take care of us, right? But then as that trajectory goes into adulthood, we're brilliant. We know that we're not being authentic, and we genuinely want to be authentic. It's why when someone is authentic, when we see a person in the public eye who's being authentic, we admire that. It resonates with us at a really deep level because there's this part of us that is in alignment with it and wants to be given expression to, right? And so that's the self-hatred is not, oh, this person that I am. No, you're hating this facade of who you are. And the love, oh my God, the love that can be activated within you, right? That comes from the core of who you are. The love can help you to love this facade, right? Understand that the facade was necessary for your survival. But now you can say, okay, I'm done with you. I'm ready for you to dissolve and make way for this real me to show up in my life. Because I'll be damned if I'm going to live the rest of this existence as an imposter. Lupus is a wake-up call, not a life sentence.
Yeah. I think back to, again, the words that I used to say to myself. And when I look back at it through the lens of the authenticity, I can see, I can just see how everything lined up to get me there. And it's interesting because I didn't have, I can't look at my childhood and say, oh, there was that trauma and this trauma, and my parents didn't do this or they did that. I don't really have those type of experiences to draw on as to why I covered up or why I think for me, it wasn't so much covering up. It was just being afraid to be authentic from the get go. As a child, I was so shy and quiet, and that my mom related to. So she allowed that and sheltered me more than pushed me to develop and get out there more. So I guess that I could turn to, but I think for me, it was just for some reason I came into this world with this fear of expressing myself loudly or clearly or in any type of public eye, and for fear of judgment. And that just slowly snowballs over life. And then I ended up in a relationship where I couldn't express myself freely, and all these triggers along the way. And I used to have all these gut issues, and I would get super bloated, and people would think that I was pregnant, and I would get so upset at my body, and I would say such hateful things to my body. And I can just see, especially with the way that you are speaking to this and how we end up in these places of lupus or other autoimmune diseases or other relationship patterns or things that happen. And it's wow, I really just need to cultivate that self-love. And I have to look back and shower my younger self with love and compassion, right? Not berate myself even more for doing it.
Yes, yes.
Where things start to shift. And you speak to self-worth. I'd love to dive into that topic because I think a lot of it for me too was that for whatever reason I developed it was this underlying feeling of self, like not being worthy of maybe the life that I had in my head, the life that I had in my dreams, not under having any idea how to attain that. And it just turns into this like lack of self-worth. So how have you seen that play out in, for example, your best friend's experience? Did she experience can you look back and see self-worth issues there? And how do you address that with other lupus sisters?
For sure, for sure. I wasn't as versed in worthiness back then as I am now because my experience with worthiness came from my own sense of unworthiness and peeling back the layers and reconnected to my innate worth. But I can definitely, in retrospect, see worthiness was an issue for her. She was very externally focused and did things that I believe she thought needed to be done in order to feel worthy, right? And worthiness, oh my God, worthiness is a game changer. Unworthiness is such a subtle dynamic in our lives. It exists beneath the surface. And many people don't even realize that they're under its spell because it's so subtle. But it's behind so many different dynamics in our lives. It's behind people going to jobs they hate. It's behind remaining in unhealthy and toxic relationships. And I put a caveat on both of those things because when you reconnect to your innate worth, you can actually take a job that you hate and turn it into a job you love. Because when you activate your innate worth, you unleash qualities within yourself. And your worthiness is a gateway to the truth of who you are. It's connected to your authenticity. So when you activate your innate worth, you activate all these wonderful qualities within yourself. And where unworthiness had you suppressing parts of yourself because you just didn't feel worthy enough to show up fully, when you activate your innate worth and these qualities, you allow these qualities to show up on this job that you hated. Now you're making a contribution to the company in a way that feels good to you, right? You're more motivated, you're more productive. And now this job that you hated is turning into this job you love. And it's because you're showing up more authentically. You're showing up from your space of worthiness. As it relates to health, I think that one of the reasons that so many people are under not the impression, but believe what the medical community says about lupus being incurable, I think it speaks to worthiness. I think it speaks to worthiness. We can never be, do, or have more than we feel worthy of being, doing, or having, right? And so if I'm dealing with any degree of unworthiness and I'm navigating this horrible disease, there's a part of me that's saying that, you know what, okay, it's incurable anyway. And so who am I to even think beyond that? Who am I? I'm not worthy of even considering that I could release lupus from my body. Unworthiness has this stranglehold on so many different people, in so many different ways. We shrink, we dim our lights. I was married to a narcissist for 26 years. And I mentioned to you the other day that I used to be the president of the People Pleasers Club. I used to be super, super passive. It was the perfect combination, a narcissist and a people pleaser, because I just suppressed so much of who I was, right? And it was a function of my unworthiness. I didn't feel worthy of showing up authentically. And then I had this real strong fear based on childhood dynamics of abandonment, of being rejected. And so if showing up authentically meant I might lose him, oh no, let this fake version of Michelle do her thing and be as passive and people pleasing as possible because I'm going to still be connected to him. Unworthiness is powerful, very subtle, but extremely powerful. And I think that we don't have enough conversations around it because I think to acknowledge that you're dealing with unworthiness, people sometimes feel like to say that they're feeling unworthy means that there's a character flaw, there's something wrong with them. And that's not what it means at all because we're innately worthy. We're born worthy. We're born worthy. We're worthy right now. We'll always be worthy. But if our perception of our worthiness is different from the truth of who we are, then we're functioning from the space of unworthiness, right? And so it's not a character flaw. It's just a perception. And again, it goes back to conditioning. It goes back to conditioning. If you've been conditioned to believe that you're not worthy of being your authentic self, that cuts deep. And then when that informs how you move through the world, Oh my God.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode. How do we start? First, recognizing that we're under this spell of unworthiness. And then once we can recognize that, how do we start moving into a space of worthiness? Because that can be a really big leap. You can't just recognize it and then be like, oh, okay, I actually am worthy. Right? So how do we take those baby steps to get there?
So the first part is to just focus on one area of your life that is not the way you want it. You're constantly meeting with obstacles and it's not unfolding the way that you want. You're frustrated in that particular area. Unworthiness is a factor there. It is, we're just going to just let that be a given. Unworthiness is a factor, right? So that acknowledgement is actually so damn powerful because you can't heal what you won't reveal. If you can't acknowledge it, you can't heal it, right? So when you're able to acknowledge unworthiness is a factor here, right? First step. And now you have an intention to reconnect. And I say reconnect because again, we're born worthy. We're innately worthy. So this is not a connection. This is a reconnection to our innate worth. It starts with something as simple as affirming, I am worthy. And repeatedly. In the workshops that I've delivered, that's one of the activities that's have to do as a part of their homework, affirming I am worthy. We think 60,000 thoughts on average a day, 90% are repetitive, 80% are negative. Those 80% in that category are thoughts that keep that unworthiness alive, right? And so affirmations help us to interrupt the negative thinking. They help us to interrupt the negative thinking. And some people are reluctant to use affirmations because they're like, how can I walk around saying I am prosperous or I am worthy? That's not really true. It's true for your higher self, right? And so your affirmation is to begin to recondition your consciousness to align with the truth. Because what's going to happen when you start to affirm anything, all of the beliefs that run counter to that affirmation will come to the surface, right? And some people back away from the affirmation like, oh, I thought this thing was going to help me to start feeling worthy. I'm feeling worse than it's a process called chemicalization, right? Where you're making progress on a spiritual path, you're pouring new, good content into your consciousness. Anything that runs counter to that is going to bubble up to the surface. And it's a good thing because if it doesn't come up, you can't heal it, right? But if people don't know that and they start to feel overwhelmed with all this, what feels like negativity coming to the surface, they back away from it, right? But that's when the true healing is possible. That's when anything that stirs up in you when you say, I am worthy. And, your dad used to tell you that you were stupid. Okay. That's an opportunity to heal that. When you were in school, that teacher told you that you were never going to amount to anything. That's an opportunity to heal that. Everything that comes to the surface, when you start to do affirmations, that's when that is your assignment. That's where you need to focus your work, to clean that up, to hold that up to the light. And from this perspective, as an adult, you can look back at childhood things and you can see them differently. When you were a kid, the authority figures in our lives, everything they said was true for us. We allowed it to land into our subconscious mind because that's what children do, right? And then our subconscious mind goes toward bringing us experiences to confirm that belief system. So now that we're older and we can look back at it and we can say any teacher who would tell a kid that they won't amount to anything should never have been a teacher in the first place. What was wrong with her? What did she bring with her from home to work? We can give it some perspective and realize that it wasn't personal. It wasn't about me. It was about her and her flawed unworthiness that allowed her to speak to a kid that way. We can give that some perspective. We can clean that up and realize that it does not define us. Absolutely does not define us. And so that's how the work to reconnect to your innate worth starts to unfold. Acknowledge the unworthiness, start to affirm that you are worthy, right? Allow whatever's coming up to come up, but recognize that it's coming up for you to have an opportunity to heal it, right? And the more you do that, the more you start to connect with your innate worth. And there are other things that need to happen as well, because with this social media society, we were obsessed with social media. And sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, social media is doing far more harm than good. And so we have to just start to become more selective about what we allow to land in our subconscious minds. What kind of TV shows am I watching? Am I saying that I want a loving relationship, but I'm watching all of these divorce shows? My subconscious mind is picking up on everything that I'm giving it and taking it literally. So I can go all day on that, but I'm going to stop.
Yeah. And to add to that inquiry of the why do I feel unworthy here, we can look back and say, what I tell my clients is ask yourself, how do I know this to be true? Or can I prove this to be true? I'll never amount to anything. Can you prove that? Like, where did that come from? Track that back because my dad told me, or because that teacher told me. On what basis did they know that to be true? Can we actually track this down to facts, or is this just hearsay? 99% of the time, our beliefs about ourselves are going to be hearsay. And maybe we do find something to be true, and then we can still hold on to that. But it's just a good line of questioning to like really draw somebody back to, gosh, I've always held that belief to be true, like my whole adult life. But is it really? Holy shit. I can't find any proof for that. You know? Yeah, so I think that's just like a really powerful line of questioning, and it's just so empowering to start the process of unraveling. And like you said, it's gonna bring up some stuff, and you're gonna end up feeling worse for a bit. In healing, that's just a detox. You're going through a detox. That's to be expected anytime if you're cleaning your house, you're gonna sneeze because you're probably gonna be sweeping up a bunch of dust. That doesn't mean you should stop cleaning the house.
Right.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, I just think about it that way. And I don't know, you're right. We could talk about this for hours, but we are coming up on time. Is there anything that we haven't really addressed yet that you want to speak to, or any last words of wisdom or thoughts for our lupus sisters out there?
One thing that I recently discovered was that as it relates to the medical community's assertion that lupus is incurable, the pharmaceutical industry generates a market value of $183 billion with a B, billion dollars from lupus medication, right?
Just from lupus medication.
Just from lupus medication. Just from lupus medication. By comparison, prostate cancer generates about 13 billion. Breast cancer generates about 33 billion. Lupus medication, just lupus medication, not all autoimmune diseases, just lupus medication generates 183 billion. They project that in less than 10 years, it will be at $320 billion. Lupus implants. primarily women, right? Black women make up the largest group of lupus warriors, right? The medical community and the pharmaceutical community are not interested in finding a cure. Okay. They are symptom driven, and the medications that generate $183 billion are designed to help people manage their symptoms. Manage their symptoms. That blew me away. That blew me away. I had to just stop. I had to sit my behind down when I saw that figure. Source led me to it because I'm like, Source, help me to really understand what's going on here. Help me to really just pull the dynamics together and see the big picture, right? There have been so many different movies and documentaries over the years over the greed and the abuse in the pharmaceutical industry and its ties to the medical community, right? It's no coincidence that lupus, they're not looking for. They're not looking for a cure for something that generates $183 billion a year. So my message to lupus warriors is that the cure will not be found by the medical community. It will not. My goal with the Love Renaissance Project is to help at least 1,000 women to release lupus from their bodies because it can be done. It absolutely, positively can be done. The mind-body connection is real. The characteristics and the adaptive behaviors that women embraced to survive their environment that led to this diagnosis, that can be unraveled, that can be undone, right? And there's this whole journey to connect with your authenticity. That unravels so many of these maladaptive behaviors. Reconnecting to your authentic self can help you to release lupus from your body. It's a wake-up call, not a life sentence.
Michelle, where can everyone find you?
On Instagram, I am at the_love_renaissance_project. I also have I am Michelle Hollinger on Instagram and on Facebook. I'm working on a new website right now, so I won't give that out because it's not done. But those two spots is where people can find me right now.
Wonderful. And then we're also going to put the links to your books that you've written on worthiness, right, in the show notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite in my series of my worthiness books is Sis, You're Worth It. Sis, You're Worth It. And that's available on Amazon, but we'll definitely put the links for sure.
Wonderful. Michelle, such an incredibly powerful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
There were so many jewels of wisdom in this conversation with Michelle that I feel like I could talk for another hour or two just to tease them out even further. But what I want to bring it back to is creating and finding compassion for yourself as you go through this journey. As she's talking about cleaning house, right? Starting to release some of these beliefs that you've been living with around your illness, who you are currently, what you've been through. As you start to release those things and that the funk comes up and it gets really uncomfortable, that is the perfect opportunity to cultivate compassion. Cultivating compassion for yourself, opening your heart to yourself and your experiences and what you've been through is huge in being able to release these things. Having compassion for yourself, that just around the fact that it's hard to release things even when we don't want them in our lives. We've just been so conditioned to having them there. We expect them to be there. Our nervous system wants to keep them there because that's what it's used to. So having compassion for what you're going through right now as you're going through this process, but also in looking back over all the different little tiny things that has happened in your life, whether subconsciously or consciously, whether you had the actual control over the situations or not, having compassion for that person that you were last week or last year or 20 years ago and sending love to who you used to be. That is so incredibly powerful and healing because it starts to open up your heart to your authentic self. And that is Michelle's passion, is to help women with lupus get back to their authentic self and remember who they truly are at a soul level, at a divine level. If this resonates with you, please let us know. Michelle and I would love to know how this hit home for you, whether you find it empowering, whether you find it triggering. We want to know all of it. So please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you in your journey moving forward. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I do ask that you share this podcast because it's such a powerful one, whether that's sharing it to your social media, whether it's sharing it to a friend that may find this empowering, that may need to hear these messages. I appreciate you spreading the word. Thank you so much. See you next week.